And this week, we're focused on Nigeria's relations with Belgium, which date back to 1960. Both countries have maintained cordial and mutually beneficial engagements. Most bilateral issues between them have involved African, Caribbean, and Pacific group of countries' engagements with the European Union. Back in 2012, Belgium hosted then Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan and hosted then Vice President Namadi Sambo during a high-level conference on the Sahel in 2014. Belgium has always collaborated with Nigeria in the United Nations system and other multilateral institutions. They supported Nigeria in her candidature for President of the Council of International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. There are over 40 Belgian firms involved in various businesses in Nigeria. Many fairly used motor vehicles and spare parts imported from Europe come through the port of Antwerp. There's a working relationship between Nigerian Port Authority and the Belgian Antwerp-Flanders Port Training Center, which has been a useful partner in the ongoing diversification of the Nigerian economy. Recently, I had a chat with Ambassador Daniel Dargent on the improving ties between both countries, the problems in Europe with the ongoing Brexit negotiations, and migration. Interestingly, this is his last assignment before going into retirement from foreign service. Enjoy. Ambassador Dargent, thank you for speaking with us today. Let's talk about how long you've been in Nigeria and your experience so far.
Thank you very much for asking. So I've been in Nigeria since a bit more than 1 year now. But as you might know or not, I always lived in Nigeria 20 years ago. I was 3 years in Lagos from 1998 till 2001. So for me, it's a comeback to Nigeria. Of course, now I'm living in Abuja since the embassy has been transferred to the Federal Capital Territory. But I'm coming often to Lagos for, of course, it's a business center. So I'm enjoying my stay in Nigeria. Very interesting stay.
And have you noticed any changes from 20 years ago when you were here and now that you're back serving as ambassador?
That's a good question. There are, I think, some positive development and some more challenge ahead. I think there are positive development in the sense that I see that Lagos is booming. There are quite a lot of new industries, new projects, like we just had the session this morning on the new Lekki trade zone, free trade zone. So I think that's a new side. So yes, it has changed, but I would say generally speaking, the pattern of the city is quite the same, which is good. Of course, Abuja has developed tremendously since I was here in the end of the 90s, and now Abuja has become a real city. But of course, the problem is more now in the north of the country, all the security problems, and not only the north. I think when I was there 20 years ago, there were some security problems, but not as it is now, especially in the north of Nigeria.
Speaking of those diplomatic ties between Nigeria and Belgium, they began since 1960 when Nigeria became independent. And I remember about 2 years ago, the Nigerian ambassador to Belgium talked about renewed ties with Belgium, making one wonder if there ever was a lull, in relations between Belgium and Nigeria.
You mean that there was a gap in the development?
Yes, if there was.
I wouldn't say that, an ambassador always say that there will be a new development. That's normal in the diplomatic languages. Huh? You want also to show that things are moving ahead. I think there were always good relations and quite strong ties between our two countries, but probably there are more potential ahead because I see especially here in Lagos State, there are some new projects. So this year I can say that we will have 3 economic missions coming to Nigeria. We had one in March of this year with a minister leading the delegation. There is the one which is happening now in Lagos State, and at the end of this month there will be a new mission. The Port of Antwerp is coming with some affiliated companies. So I think that things are developing, are booming, which I think is positive. For the past, I wouldn't say that there was a gap in our relations, but maybe there is more coming ahead.
And I'm glad you talk about the port of Antwerp, which is a major port for shipping manufactured goods into Nigeria. I think it's a major one for the rest of Europe, shipping through the port of Antwerp. And you notice a lot of investment in Nigeria. But do you also have as much investment of Nigerians and Nigerian businesses in Belgium?
Okay, I think that's a question who is more to ask the Nigerian ambassador to Belgium, to know how many investment from Nigeria in Belgium. But of course, I guess they are quite limited, as Nigeria is focused on its own development, so it's attracting investment from abroad. Of course, you have big companies like NNPC in the oil sector. I don't know if they have a branch in Belgium. It might be, because a lot of the crude oil is exported to Antwerp to be refined, at least till now, which should probably change in the future, especially with the new Dangote refinery coming ahead in this Lekki free zone. So, and I think it will be better for Nigeria. But so far we do that in Belgium, in Antwerp, not all the crude oil, but a part of the crude oil which is re-exported to Nigeria once it is refined. So, but about the investment of Nigeria to Belgium, of course, we are open. You are most welcome to invest in Belgium. We always are glad to see foreign countries to invest in Belgium. We are an open economy, and we have also support to newcomers and new investors. So please come invest in Belgium, I would say. But I know that's probably not the priority for Nigeria. The priority is to develop its own production and then to attract foreign investment, and maybe investment from Belgium.
To do business, you will need a visa to get to Belgium. And I know a number of people who have complained, and I personally have been affected by, the seemingly strict the restrictions on visa issuance for Belgium. Talk a bit more about that, especially long-term visas.
I cannot say that. I don't think so. We are in a Schengen country. We implement the same rules that all the 27 or 28 other partners. It's, Schengen is a coordination system, so we have to apply the same rules. Of course, sometimes it might be a bit different for some documents that we require, but normally it's quite strict. But when you say it's one of the most difficult, I don't think so. I think 80% of the applicants receive a visa from the Belgian embassy. Of course, you need to prove that you have the reason to go to Belgium. You have to prove that you have enough means to go there. But when you say long-term visa, there are two kinds of long-term visa. To have a residence permit, of course, there are specific conditions. You don't receive the residence in Belgium like that. It might be for family reason. If you have people of your family living in Belgium, normally you are entitled to have a residence permit in Belgium, or for business reasons sometimes, but under specific rules, but under specific conditions. But what you can receive is a visa multiple entry for a long-term period. I think we can deliver maximum 5 years, but on the condition that your passport is still valid for 5 years. Of course, we give a multiple entry visa for 5 years to people who are really reliable and that have a reason and enough evidences that they will respect all the conditions. So I would say this is not really a problem, just that to get a visa you need to respect the condition. And as I have just said, I think that we deliver maybe between 60 and 80% of the applications in function of the documentation we receive.
Now, interestingly, since you're talking about migration, Brussels is the political capital of Europe. And, with the whole migrants crisis, the rest of Europe was affected by. How has Belgium been able to manage the migrant crisis and how much of it has affected the country?
Yes, I think we face the same challenge that the other European countries. But of course, Belgium, we have, I think, a quite good policy to manage it. So we had at a certain moment a flow of immigrants coming to Belgium to ask the political asylum. Of course, we don't accept to give economic asylum. I think if you want to stay in Belgium, if you are a migrant, you have to prove that you have problems in your own country. There are many reasons, but of course there is a screening after. If you don't, let's say, respect the condition to be a refugee, you are supposed to leave the country. Of course, we know that a lot of immigrants try to come to France, Belgium, to pass to UK. So we had also a part of this, let's say, transit immigrants. But I think we managed to have the control on the situation. We have still, but I think it went down quite drastically the last months. But of course, we are still facing a challenge like the other countries in Europe. I wouldn't say that Belgium was not affected. Yes, we had to also to cope with this situation. But I think in a decent way and with the most humanitarian policy as possible.
I do remember it was about this time, back in 2015, some European countries came together and invited African leaders over to discuss the migrant crisis. Would that have had anything to do with how Europe has handled the situation?
Yes, I think this summit was interesting because it's an opportunity of dialogue between leaders of Europe and leaders of Africa. We have both interest in the fact that the migrants would be at least not the victim of human traffickers, and that the migration would be as much as possible under the control of governments. The consequence of this summit was also the development of a dialogue which is called the Rabat process. It's a platform gathering more than 60 countries from Europe and Africa, mainly West Africa and maybe Central Africa, to control these flows of migrants. But of course, the reason of migration is mainly the fact that people are looking for a better life. So I would say, let's try in cooperation with African leaders to develop Africa and to give to people decent condition of life, housing, healthcare, education, jobs. And if you can give the people these conditions, then you solve the problem of migration. I don't think that the African, Nigerian or other Africans try to do this dangerous journey, passing through the sea with all the risk by plane, because they just like to live in our countries. It's because they might not have all the conditions to sustain their living decently in their own country. So I think there is a lot to do in cooperation between Europe and Africa to give these conditions.
And now to Brexit, I mean, because the UK, or rather Britain, wants to leave the European Union, and those negotiations have been going on and on. Do you think that Britain is making the right decision here by leaving the EU, and how will that, impact on the rest of Europe?
Okay, we respect the sovereignty of UK. So if they want to leave, they will leave. We hope, first we regret their decision to leave, because I think in the actual world you have to be united to face the challenges, and especially you have big blocs, America, Asia, China, and then Europe is a mosaic of countries, and even Britain alone, even France or Germany alone doesn't mean a lot in this new world, this globalization. So we have to be united as much as possible. But of course, if a country like UK decides that for any reason he wants to, they want to withdraw from the European Union. We respect that. We try to have a deal with them. You have probably follow all the development. I think the problems are more in UK than on the European side. We just, of course, there should be a deal, and a deal that is balanced for both sides. So it's why probably it's not so easy, because the European Union has also to defend its own interest when UK withdraw. We are in favor of a deal. We hope that they could stay in the single market, but of course they have also to accept they cannot have, like we say in French, I don't know if you have that in English, the butter and the money of the butter. So you have to accept also the consequences of your decisions.
It sounds to me like you're saying Europe is ready, for Britain to leave, and, not much will change after they're gone.
Depends. If there is a no deal, we might be affected a bit, but of course the member states stay a big market, so I think that will be yes, that will be not such. I think that UK has more to lose than on the EU side, but of course there will be a period of time where each country has to adapt. But I guess, and I'm confident that the UK leaders will be as, let's say, as smart to decide to conclude a good deal with the EU. So we are waiting for them to. I think there was some progress in that direction, but I think there will be a deal at the end. Then I think on the economic side, I guess we can go on exchanging with UK. I think there will be probably developments on the economic side, but on the political side, we regret that UK, which is an important political partner in the world, will not be part anymore of the political cooperation among the EU member states. So UK is member of the UN Security Council, so they have a big role to play when there are international crises. So when they were within the EU, we could include them in the EU. Now it will be a bit different, but they say important partners is not because they go out of EU that they are not anymore a partner of the EU and of Belgium or other countries, like Norway, like Switzerland, like countries which are very close to the EU but are not within the EU.
Just one final question. If given the opportunity to stay longer than your tenure here as ambassador, would you take it?
To stay more than the 4 years I'm supposed to go? Yes, just that I'm arriving at the end of my career. If I do 4 years, which is my normal tenure as ambassador of Belgium, so I will be retired. So normally I could not be prolonged as ambassador in Nigeria. I might stay for other reasons. Maybe I could come back to do business with Nigeria. But that's for another life. For now I'm ambassador and I have still 3 years, and I think it's a very interesting posting.
Ambassador Dargents, thank you for speaking with me on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you very much for inviting me to answer your question and to inform better your watcher on Belgium and the opinion of Belgium in relation with Nigeria. Thank you.
It's always nice to remember relations between Nigeria and other countries, and I'd like to know what you think about Nigeria's relations with Belgium and the topics discussed. Also, I do appreciate all the comments on the topics discussed last week with the Belgian politician, Mr. Colin Sweke, on British politics, Brexit, and NATO's relevance in today's world. You know the addresses to send your thoughts and opinions to @Amarachi_Ubani, @Channel CV, and @Diplomatic Chan, all on Twitter. I am Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.